In the year 193, the Roman Empire went up for sale. Not a province, not a title, the whole thing. The emperor's own bodyguards, the Praetorian Guard, had just murdered the man they were paid to protect, and standing over the body, they had an idea. They would auction the throne. Highest bidder runs Rome. A senator named Didius Julianus won. The price was 25,000 sesterces per soldier, about 5 years of pay each. He bought an empire. And then he couldn't pay. So he shaved the silver out the coinage to cover it, lost the city, and was executed 60 days later. The first man to buy a throne, and the first to learn you don't always get to keep it. We tell ourselves coups are chaos. Soldiers in the street, a flag coming down, a country losing its mind. They are not chaos. A coup is transaction. Someone pays, someone profits, the books balance. And it has worked that way for a very, very long time. This is the business of coups. Go back further, 3,000 years, to Egypt. Pharaoh, Ramses III, sits at the top of the most powerful state on earth, and inside his own palace, a group of his own people decide he should not be there anymore. One of his wives wants her son on the throne instead, so she builds a conspiracy. Officials, palace staff, army officers, more than 30 people on one plot. We know the details because the Egyptians wrote it down in the trial. The plan worked. Ramses was killed. And the plan failed, because the son they were fighting for never took the throne. The rightful heir did. They got the murder right and the math wrong, which as you'll see is a pattern. A few centuries later, a military commander named Zimiri kills the king of Israel and takes the crown for himself. He holds it for 7 days before it's taken from him too. This is not a modern problem. It's not a Cold War problem, or an African problem, or a Russian problem, or whatever the news tells you. For as long as there have been thrones, there have been people scheming to take them, and people willing to be paid to help. The behavior is anew. What changes over 3,000 years is the form, so let's watch it evolve. From here, the story splits into forms. Different centuries, different costumes, same transaction underneath. Because once you've seen it, you can't see the rule that runs through all of it. Whoever holds the swords sets the price of the crown. Egypt, 1250. The Sultan keeps an elite corps of slave soldiers, men bought as boys, raised for war, loyal to no family but their own. The Sultan dies in the middle of a crusade, and the slave soldiers look at the empty throne and decide they don't need a master anymore. Kill the heir and take the state for themselves. They call themselves the Mamluks, and they ran Egypt for almost 300 years. An armed class that turned into monopoly on violence, directly into a throne, and into the land and in the revenue that came with it. The bodyguards became the kings. 4 centuries later, the Ottomans had the same problem wearing a different uniform. The Janissaries, the Sultan's personal infantry, the most feared soldiers in Europe. In 1622, a young Sultan, Osman II, decided they had too much power and announced he would be building a new army to replace them. So they seized him, and they strangled him. The first time Ottoman troops murdered their own Sultan. And it wasn't rage, it was business. Every new Sultan on taking the throne paid the Janissaries a cash bonus to buy their loyalty. It was written into the budget, the standing price of the crown. When a Sultan threatened the arrangement removed them. That deal ran for 2 more centuries, until a Sultan finally settled it in 1826 by turning the artillery on them in their own barracks. Now here's one they don't call a coup, because the winners wrote the history and gave it a nicer name. The Glorious Revolution, 1688. A Dutch prince, William of Orange, sailed an invasion fleet into England, around 400 ships and more than 13,000 hired soldiers, paid for by the bankers of Amsterdam. The sitting king's support collapsed, and William took the throne. We're taught as a triumph of liberty. It was also a foreign finance takeover that came with an invoice. William brought the Dutch money machine with him. Within a few years, England had a national bank, a permanent national debt, a whole financial revolution built to serve the merchant class that had backed the invasion. One historian called it plainly, an aristocratic coup. 93. Hawaii, an independent kingdom with its own queen. A group of American and European businessmen, mostly sugar planters, wanted Hawaii annexed to the United States so their sugar could skip the American tariff. They couldn't win at the ballot, so they didn't try. They had U.S. Marines come ashore, surround the place, and force the queen to surrender her throne. Not soldiers chasing power for its own sake, businessmen seizing a country to protect a profit margin. 4 cases, 600 years apart, and the same machine every time. Sometimes the buyer's a soldier, sometimes a banker, sometimes a sugar company. But all of it is still an inside job, local players fighting over a local throne. What happens next is that one country figures out how to do this to another, on purpose, and turn it into policy. Nicaragua. 1909. The president is a man named Jose Santos de Laya, and on paper the United States should have liked him. He was a modernizer, built railroads and schools. But he had one habit Washington could not tolerate. He wanted his country to be independent. When Zelaya needed to borrow money, he didn't go to Wall Street. He raised it in London and Paris, on purpose, to owe the Americans nothing. He talked to Germany and Japan about building a canal through Nicaragua that would compete with the one the US was digging in Panama. He was trying to slip the leash, and that made him a problem. So the American Secretary of State, Philander Knox, set out to remove him. Not with an invasion, at first, with money. American companies inside Nicaragua quietly financed a rebellion against Zelaya. The treasurer of the whole operation was a clerk from an American mining firm, and estimates of the cost run from $60,000 to $2 million. Washington backed the rebels, cleaned out Zelaya, and forced him out. Now, foreign powers had toppled leaders before. Remember Hawaii, 16 years earlier. Businessmen and Marines. But that was improvised, run by men on the ground. Nicaragua was different. This was the first time the United States government sat down and deliberately orchestrated the overthrow of another country's leader as a matter of policy. The coup stopped being something that happened to a country. It became something a country could do, on purpose, to another. And the man who did a lot of the actual work said so himself, out loud, years later. Smedley Butler, a Marine general, 2 Medals of Honor, and one of the most decorated soldiers in American history. After he retired, he wrote down what he had really been doing all those years. He said he'd been a gangster for capitalism, that he made Honduras safe for the American fruit companies, and Mexico safe for American oil. He didn't dress it up. He understood he had been muscle, sent to make countries safe for somebody else's balance sheet. Once the overthrow of a government becomes a tool of foreign policy, a thing you can plan and budget and deny, stops being rare, becomes a product. In the second half of the 20th century, 2 superpowers are about to start manufacturing it at a scale the world has never seen. The middle of the 20th century is the busiest stretch for coups in recorded history, and it isn't close. 2 superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, spent 40 years competing for control of the planet, and one of the favorite instruments is the quiet removal of an inconvenient government. The pattern from Nicaragua goes industrial, and it runs on a simple repeating trigger. A country tries to take back something a foreign company owns, and shortly after that, the country's leader is gone. Iran, 1953. The Prime Minister nationalizes the oil, takes it back from the British company that would later become BP. Within 2 years, he's overthrown in an operation run by the CIA and British intelligence. The oil is carved back among the Western powers. Guatemala, 1954. A reformer redistributes unused farmland, and a lot of the land belongs to an American company, the United Fruit Company. The same year, the CIA backs a coup that removes him. Now, this one is honest to complicate. It wasn't only about bananas. It was a Cold War fear of communism, and serious people argue about which mattered more. The truth is, corporate interests in anti-communism pointed at the exact same man and pulled the trigger together. Chile, 1973. The government nationalizes the copper mines and takes over an American telephone company. The American president orders his people to, in his words, make the economy scream. The government falls. Congo, 1960. A newly independent country sits at the top of some of the most valuable cobalt and uranium on Earth. The mining is controlled by Belgian interests, and within months, the Prime Minister is removed and linked with the CIA circling the whole affair. Now, you might hear all that and think it's a story people tell, a pattern you can see if you want to see it. Here's where it stops being a story. In 2011, 3 economists did something clever. They pulled the declassified records of US coup planning, the secret dates, when an operation was actually authorized behind closed doors. Then they looked at the stock prices of the companies that stood to get their payback, and they checked what the stocks did on the secret dates, not the day of the coup, the day of the classified decision, the one the public could not have known. The stocks moved. For a company that had been fully nationalized, the share price jumped around 9% in the 4 days after top secret authorization, and more than 13% over the following weeks. And the strangest part, the secret authorizations moved the market more than the public coups did. Someone with access to the most classified decisions in the government was positioned to profit before the soldiers ever moved. The authors are careful, and so am I. They say plainly they can't prove the money was the deciding reason a coup was ordered. That ideology and strategy were in the room too. Fair. But you no longer have to take anyone's opinion that coups and profit are connected. The market already knew. And the scale of it's hard to hold in your head. Between 1950 and 2010 alone, there were 457 coup attempts around the world. About half succeeded. We are closing in on 500 to this day. This was not rare. For half a century, it was one of the most common ways power changed hands on Earth. Which brings us to now. into a version of this that is almost elegant in how cleanly it pays for itself. The old model had a problem. Running coups and propping up governments is expensive, and voters back home eventually ask why their country is spending blood and money in places they can't find on a map. The modern version solves that. It makes the coups pay for themselves. Here's the model. Analysts have it down to 3 steps. First, you let a country become unstable, or you help it along. Second, you show up offering security, soldiers for hire, no lectures about democracy attached. Third, you take your payment in something that comes out of the ground, gold, uranium, the mine is the fee. And the genius of it, if you can call it that, is that the hands doing the work is never quite yours. Sometimes it's a mercenary company, a private army with no flag, so the government paying them gets to shrug and say it has no idea who these men are. And sometimes it's older and cruder than that. You fund a rebel group, you arm an insurgency, you bankroll the men already trying to burn the place down, let them do the seizing for you. Either way, the principle is the same. Keep your own fingerprints off the gun. Plausible deniability sold separately. You can watch this happen. In the Central African Republic, a Russian mercenary network ends up controlling a gold mine the US Treasury values at over $1 billion. In Niger, a 2023 coup pushes out the French uranium company, invites in the Russians, and the United States walks away from a drone base it spends $110 million to build. But the cleanest example, the one that shows you the whole machine, is Mali. Follow the money in a circle. Western companies mine gold in Mali and pay taxes to the government. The government takes the tax money and uses it to pay the Russian mercenaries. And those mercenaries help the government push the Western miners out and seize the mines. The West own money, used up by the guns to take the West own mines. The loop closes on itself. Nobody has to invade anyone. The coup is self-funding. Between 2020 and 2024, this wave produced 13 coup attempts in the region, 8 of them successful, and pushed more than 15,000 Western troops off the continent. A whole stretch of the map changed hands, and almost no one in the West voted on it, paid for it, or even noticed it happening. That's the upgrade. The old empires had to send their own armies and answer for them. This version runs on local soldiers, foreign money, and a resource bill that the country being taken pays itself. Cheaper, quieter, and deniable end-to-end. So where does the next one happen? And the honest answer comes with a twist, because the coup has been changing shape again while everyone was watching the wrong thing. Classic military coups, tanks in the street, are actually getting rarer. But power is still being stolen, just through a different door. More and more, the people dismantling a democracy are the ones already elected to run it. It's called the self-coup. A leader wins office legitimately, then uses the office to break the thing that put him in there. Cancels the election he might lose, guts the courts, hollows out the limit on his power until the vote is theater. No tanks required. The threat moved inside the palace, and wears a suit now. But the old kind hasn't gone anywhere, and you can see the warning lights. In June 2024, in Bolivia, a general drove troops in an armored vehicle into the main square of the capital and rammed the doors of the presidential palace. It collapsed within hours, and the story got murky afterward. The general claimed the president staged it. The president denied it. The argument isn't settled. But here's the part that fits everything you've just watched. Bolivia is sitting on one of the largest lithium reserves on the planet, the metal that powers every battery in the modern world. And the president's own explanation was that foreign interests were circling it. Peru has been through 6 presidents under 5 years, and in 2022, one of them tried to dissolve the entire Congress by decree before the army refused him, and he was arrested by the afternoon. In Armenia in 2021, the army's high command went on the record demanding the prime minister resign, which he called a attempted coup. Though no soldiers ever moved, pressure's everywhere. It just doesn't always come as a gunshot. And if you want to guess where it lands next, start by asking which one has something worth the world needs badly enough to pay for, and who already has soldiers standing close enough to take it. Step back from all of it, the shape is clear. 3,000 years, every continent, every kind of government, and the same transaction underneath. A throne, and someone willing to pay to move whoever's sitting on it. A praetorian with a sword, a banker in Amsterdam, a sugar planter, a spy with a classified cable, a mercenary with a mining contract. The price changes, the deal never does. And I want to be careful with the world here, because it's easy to overreach. This isn't a single conspiracy, and it isn't one company secretly running the world. It's something simpler and harder to fix. It's a pattern. Whenever a throne is worth something, a market forms around taking it. We started in a Roman camp with an empire sold to the highest bidder. 18 centuries later, it's a gold mine in Mali, paid for with someone else's taxes. The buyer changed, the throne is still for sale.